Thank you very much for that, Callan. Hello, everyone. I've got my laptop here. There was some things going on with the IT, but it's all fixable with the addition of my magical laptop. So let me just bring up my slides here and make sure that they correspond with the clicker. If I click one there, will it do it? Yes, lovely. So thank you so much for having me. I will say my mental health's been a bit misbehavey the last few weeks. It probably won't affect my talk, but I might be a little bit more sensitive than usual, but it's all good. So I'm going to talk about autistic women and employment. Now, the meme up there, I do a new meme every day. I've been doing them since 2014. I have a lot. And this one says, "It's your life, you are in charge." And hopefully when people are employed, that is something that's more likely to be the case. So I usually do a list of dot points about what I get up to. And I thought, nah, that's boring. Let's do some pictures. So this is me doing a few of the things I do. The one on the left-hand side is me with a book called Spectrum Women that's brand new, and I have a chapter in it. So yes, I am an author and a writer. I blog regularly. I'm a feature writer for Spectrum Women. If I don't write for a week, I feel like I'm missing something. Up the top's me basically doing this in a different setting at a conference. I love presenting. I really enjoy it. I look forward to getting up on stage. Down the bottom, that is my mum. I do apologise to my mum. She's not a big fan of being in photos, but in the last sort of 13 years since I've been an autism advocate, she's had to get used to it. And I'm actually standing next to a life-size version of me. I'm on a mural in Canberra for local heroes, which makes me laugh because I read the bios of all the people. And the first one was a police officer who'd saved like 20 people from drowning in a flood. And then there was me, who sits at home on their laptop and makes memes. But yes, it's all good. I better remember to click both things or we'll be behind in the slides. Just another quick one of me. The one on the left is me getting Volunteer of the Year award in the ACT in 2016, yay to that. Down the bottom, you'll see my mum again in the corner giving me a standing ovation along with 1,300 other people and my dad. And that was, I spoke with Temple Grandin, so that's a big career-making, lovely thing to do. And on the end is me speaking for TEDx, as you do. I spoke about resilience. I love talking about resilience, but that's another talk. Now, enough about me. Well, I will get back to my employment journey, but enough about what I get up to now. I thought I'd put in a slide about autism generally, just because I don't know what everybody knows. I don't want to give a whole load of assumed knowledge and have people here sitting here thinking, I don't know what they're talking about. So autism is a neurological difference. It is a different wiring in the brain. It is not necessarily a deficit, and many autistic people, including myself, don't really use the word disorder because we see it as, there we go. I thought I'd lost audio. We see it as a divergence rather than a deficit. That's quite an important point around autism. Of course, everyone has different views. I'm presenting my own. It affects all genders. Notice I don't say both. We'll talk about that soon. All autistic people are different. It's not one size fits all. The advocate Stephen Shaw in the US coined the term, if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. I'd add to that, please meet some more of us because we're really cool. It is estimated, which somebody else had in their presentation, that around 1 in 100 Australians are on the autistic spectrum. The spectrum includes all cognitive abilities, people with different support needs, people who speak and who don't speak, and of course that can change over time within one individual. And autistic people often, in an employment context, have a very high level of skills, which is often quite untapped. So, about me. I thought I'd just put in a quick employment journey just to set the context, I guess. So that's me up the top in year 12. I was thinner and I was much more of a socialist, but it was still me. I was unprepared for study or work. I didn't know what it all meant. So when I left home, when I was 17, long story, it's in my autobiography, I got a job at a fast food restaurant and it was during a recession. This was in 1992. Youth unemployment was that high. It was almost impossible to get a job. I went to about 40 interviews with no success and eventually landed a job in a fast food restaurant, which I didn't enjoy, but I needed money and it paid money. What I didn't understand was that your skill level increased when you worked. And so even if I'd left after 3 months, I would have more skills than I did when I applied. But in my mind, I thought that every time for the rest of my life that I applied for a job, it would be like applying for a job when I was 17 during a recession. So that was not good. It was actually very unpleasant. And the worst thing, a lot of unpleasant things happened. I was there for about 2 years. And the final thing that I couldn't deal with was we had a new store manager came and he was a bit of a creep, and he sexually harassed a number of the female staff members, and he sexually harassed me. And I didn't understand that it was illegal or that there was anything I could do about it. I thought it was entirely my responsibility and I had to leave. So I quit. The worst thing about that was I quit and went on benefits. So in my subconscious, work, when I thought of the idea of work, it meant I'm going to get harassed and abused and it's going to be awful. And not working with, I get money to go to university and I don't have to do anything onerous. So that was not a good thing. In fact, anyone who follows all the things that I get up to and things I've been up to in my life will know that between about 1994 and 2000, my life was totally chaotic and hellish, and I was certainly unemployed. In fact, I would say technically I was outside of the labour force for many years. I was not engaged in looking for work or thinking that was something I'd ever do. But when I was about 25, I decided to change my life, and I decided I wanted a professional job, an education, a mortgage and a suit. And I set about getting those things. Within 8 years, I had those things, all of them. But it wasn't easy, and rejoining the workforce, even if I wasn't autistic and didn't have a mental illness, would have been hard. So it was a real challenge, and I was very anxious, and I was so anxious that I could hardly bear to work. It was a sense of responsibility, even in a dishwashing job that I had, was so much I had to quit, and I got quite unwell. So I realised when that happened, and that was in 2001, I need to take incremental steps in order to be able to work. I can't just jump straight into it, so what do I do? So I got a volunteer job a few years afterwards. I kept going to uni. Then I got a small business doing video editing, and that taught me some other skills around employment. Just gradually built my skill until I'd written my first book and it was published, and I applied for 2 public service graduate jobs, having no idea how competitive it was to apply for such things. And surprisingly enough, I was successful. So I joined the public service. So in February 2007, I moved to Canberra and started a whole new job. It was all change. It was so much change, but it was so much positive change. It was escape from poverty. It was a new world, and it was a good world, and I knew that. I've been promoted twice since 2007. I'm now a level 6, so go me. I have a very supportive workplace. I was talking with someone beforehand about how lovely my employer is and how when I've been really unwell with mental health stuff in the past, there's been support rather than blame, and it's just a great place to be. I'm very much out loud and proud at work, particularly as autistic. It's hard not to be. I'm often on the radio or the TV. I have books, so I've got a profile. If I tried to hide the fact I'm autistic, it would sort of backfire, so I sort of am out by default. But what this means is that other autistic people and other people with mental illness in the workplace can see my example of someone who's doing well and has various health conditions and things, and actually use that themselves. And it also shows my employer and my managers the benefit of having someone like me in the workplace. And that's what I'm going to talk about today, is the benefits of autistic women and autistic people in the workplace for employers. And of course, in addition to my paid work in the public service, I also have this work, my autism-related work, which I always think is quite funny because I never set out for it to be a business, but it's a major source of income now. I have a friend who's an entrepreneur, and we were driving off somewhere together, and I was talking and saying, I'm so in awe of you for being an entrepreneur. She'd been on Shark Tank and everything. It's fantastic. And she goes, you've got a business. I'm like, yeah, by accident. But I do have a business. And I guess some lessons from my experience. Don't give up, and don't give up whether you're an employee or a prospective employee or whether you're an employer. Incremental steps and controlled challenges are a great way of getting past some of those roadblocks that things like anxiety can put up. My employer and me both benefit immensely from my work. This is a mutually beneficial relationship. My skills at work translate to my business in the autism world and vice versa, which is great. If you learn new skills from anywhere, that's good. And I have an incredibly positive attitude at work, and that's also a very good thing. So just some more lessons. Anyone who does know my history knows between 1994 and 2000 I had some criminal history stuff and drug abuse, and I was a member of some fairly extremist left-wing groups. So my employer took a huge risk on employing me, and it was worth it for both them and me, and that's a really interesting thing to think about. I don't view myself when I'm at work as an autistic employee. I view myself as an employee. I'm not being paid to be autistic. I'm being paid to do my job. And I'm dedicated, loyal and engaged after over 11 years. And I always joke that I'm still in my honeymoon period. And that picture of me there I'm holding an award. That's from our secretary for non-public servants in the world. Our secretary is our CEO, and she gave me an award for leadership around disability in the department a couple of years ago, and I'm very proud of that, and I've got that displayed at my desk along with another one I've got. So that's enough about me. We won't talk about Jeanette now. Employment in autistic women. So I've got another of my lovely memes which says, have I clicked the power? No, it doesn't say have I clicked the clicker. It says, give me good friends, good work, autism, acceptance and respect for all. There we go. Okay, so my first slide is not about employment. It's about intersectionality and gender. Why would I be talking about such things? Well, this is really important. If we're talking about autism and women, this slide is key. The first idea is that of intersectionality. Now, some of you may have heard of that, some may not. I first became interested in this a few years ago, and I was on Facebook. When I go home from work, I get the bus and I sit there on my phone and do all my social media stuff on my way home. And I'd seen this guy who'd recently added me in America, and he was complaining that these feminists had complained to him that his autism group had 12 white male admins and nobody else. And he wrote, autism has no gender, and I was utterly horrified. As somebody who's experienced discrimination and violence on the basis of my gender and my autism, this did not describe my experience. And I raced home and I wrote a blog, and it was called Autism Has a Gender and a Sexuality and a Race and a Class and Every Other Thing. This is the concept of intersectionality. If you imagine you've got a white, cisgendered, heterosexual, autistic man who lives in the North Shore of Sydney, and then you've got an Aboriginal lady who lives in a remote community and has 5 children and is autistic. They're both autistic, but their experience of life is likely to be very, very different. And more elements of disadvantage and being members of disadvantaged groups compound the existing ones. It's not so much as an addition as a multiplication. And when you're working with anyone from disadvantaged groups, this is a really important concept. The other important concept is gender identity. So I don't have the statistics here with me, but there's a lot of recent evidence, and anecdotally this is true for me too. Autistic people are way more likely to be gender diverse, transgender, non-binary, gender fluid than other people, significantly more likely. So I'm non-binary myself, and a lot of the autistic people I know do not identify with the binary male or female. This is really common. So when we're talking about autism, we're also talking about gender diversity, and I know there is some contention here and some people have some issues with this, but this is not me pushing a barrow, this is not me pushing an agenda, this is simply how it is. So when I'm talking about women, I'm not just talking about people assigned female gender at birth, I'm talking about trans people, I'm talking about non-binary people, and the idea of gender way beyond that simple idea of male and female. So I did need to say that before I got into the presentation. And so I've got some statistics on employment, which someone's already shared, so I won't go too much into that. Much lower, significantly lower labour force participation rate, and an unemployment rate, because labour force participation, as people may be aware, covers people that are unemployed and seeking work, or that are employed for 1 hour or more per week. So that 40.8% covers a lot of people who may be unemployed or underemployed. The actual unemployment rate for autistic people, as at 2015, was 31.6%, so around 6 times higher than for people without disability. This relates to a range of issues. Generally, it does not relate to the employability or the enthusiasm for work of autistic people. This goes beyond that. A lot of it is structural, a lot of it is individuals going through life and not getting jobs and becoming demoralised, and a lot of it is employers not understanding the value of having an autistic staff member. It is not due to the skill level or employability level of autistic people more generally. There we go. So many things to press. Anyway, autistic women, some characteristics of autistic women and some of the challenges that they can face. Often misdiagnosed, missed or self-diagnosed. They may struggle to complete education and join the workforce, and that is true for all autistic people. Masking is very common, the idea of pretending to be someone that you're not in order to get by in society. This is a practical strategy because we can be discriminated against horribly just for appearing different. The problem with masking is that you lose any sense of who you are. It takes your identity. And then what do you do if you do remove the mask? Isn't that a bit challenging and scary? So that's a real issue. Autistic women often lack confidence, and many autistic women are parents as well. Autism has a strong genetic link. Where do you reckon the autistic kids come from? And I've got a little meme here, which is like an intersectionality meme that says, autistic women can experience all the inequality other women do, plus that which autistic people do, which is what I was just saying then. So, autistic women, here's some more positive elements of autistic women. Empathetic and thoughtful, having passionate interests on a topic, being responsible, being creative, seeing things that others miss, and seeing things in a unique way. And I should qualify that by saying, of course, that's not every single autistic woman. That's, a sample of their common characteristics, not universal ones. So what can autistic women bring to the workplace? I've got this lovely meme. It's very purple. It's Purple Meme Day, apparently. Autistic people can be excellent employees, dedicated, enthusiastic, and aware of important details that others may miss. So some of the qualities that autistic women and autistic people more generally can bring to the workplace include attention to detail, enthusiasm and loyalty, honesty. We tend to be honest by default, a work ethic, taking pride in our work, innovative thinking, and all of this promotes diversity. And what is the good thing about diversity? Diversity is a really useful concept at work. It is not about being nice. None of this presentation is about being nice to autistic people, feeling sorry for people, giving a charity, anything like that. This is about bottom line for employers, that this is a good idea to employers. So, of course, being nice and inclusive and charitable is good too. But basically, if you talk to an employer, they're not likely to say, I will do this because it's nice. They'll do it because it makes business sense. This is a good thing. It's a good idea. Diversity at work. So if you imagine the Myers-Briggs, and when the Myers-Briggs, those personality testing things first came out, people used to think, apparently, that you want a team full of people like me, ESTJs. Yes, I'm that type. You want a team full of leadership types. Can you imagine if you have a team full of only leadership types? Status anxiety, competitiveness, all of that. So you actually want a diverse team. You want different personality types in your team to complement each other and cover off all the skills that each other group lacks. So diversity around autism or gender or anything else is an extension of that. You want a diverse team because it will get the job done better, and hiring autistic staff is a good way of doing this. Actions that you do to support autistic employees, particularly sensory things and stuff like that, can flow on to the other staff in your organisation. Autistic staff may have valuable skills that nobody else does, and autistic employers are often highly loyal, diligent and skilled. This stuff might take a bit of effort up front for onboarding and those kind of processes. And this is why I'm here talking with these wonderful people from DXC and the Autism CRC, because they're doing this work. But the effort for that is actually tends to be really worth it. Some of the other benefits of employing autistic women, adds to diversity, talked about that. Autistic people, not always, but we tend to be very keen to please in a work environment. We want to do a good job. That's a great quality. We tend to take our work seriously, and we tend to be less likely to waste time or be unethical. And when issues arise, they're often not through intent, which makes them so much easier to address. I'll give an example. Somebody who was an employee in one of the programs in Canberra, I don't think it was one of the Dandelion ones, I think it might have been a different one, his manager was complaining that he'd finished the work and then just slack off and go on Facebook for the rest of the day. And so the manager thought this wasn't cool at all and spoke to the person supporting the program, who spoke to the employee. The employee said, I didn't know I wasn't supposed to, I just ran out of things to do, so I had to fill my time. And so now the manager will ask that person to do things once they finish a task and says, when you finish a task, come and talk to me and I'll give you something else to do. And the issue is solved. It's not always that easy to solve, but often it's a misunderstanding, a lack of common thinking. And once both sides understand where the other one's from, it is not that hard to fix. I love this meme. This is actually my meme for today. This is the first time my meme has had an outing. It's on my Facebook this morning, and it's had an outing here, and it's my happy CEO, and she's saying respect for diversity doesn't just make a happier workplace, it improves productivity and is good for the business. That's basically, I should have just shown that and then you could all go to lunch, but there we go. Do like that one. So there are challenges which can arise. Autism, there wouldn't be a diagnosis of autism if there weren't challenges, because what would the need be? So some of the challenges that can happen in the workplace, sensory issues. Now, I don't know if people know much about sensory processing disorder, but it's a really serious thing. I've known someone who sold a house because of noise from a neighbour, and they couldn't resolve it. Sensory stuff is overwhelming. I'll actually give an example of one that I've had. I have a really strong sense of smell, and my sensory issues tend to be smell related. I hate mushrooms. I hate eating mushrooms and fungus and all that kind of stuff. I won't go near it. I had a business breakfast with some of the community leaders in Canberra, and it was quite a nice restaurant. And my friend Christina, sitting next to me, ordered an omelette with black truffles that they shaved on. I'd never been in close proximity to black truffles, but knew they're meant to be a delicacy. And the smell of them was so overwhelming, I had to sit down the other end of the restaurant and not do anything while she was eating them, because the smell was inside me. I had flashbacks to that smell for a month. That's a sensory issue. The problem with sensory stuff is that people's reality is seen through their senses. So it's like, well, you can't be seeing things differently, but people do. Anxiety is a very common issue for autistic people generally. Bullying, discrimination and micromanagement, these can definitely happen. The idea of the hidden curriculum of employment, those unwritten rules that we're all supposed to know, but not everyone does. I'll give an example of that too. This is not my example. I was at a conference a few years ago in Tasmania, and the speaker before me was a manager at an employment service provider, and he gave an example of a young man he'd placed in a corporate workplace, and this guy was doing really well and he liked his job and he could see his future there. And then one day out of the blue he rings up and goes, "I lost my job." And the employment services manager said, "Well, what happened?" "Well, I had a meeting booked at 11 and I went past at 10:40 and it was full of people, the meeting room. So I popped my head in and said, 'Hey everyone, could you make sure you chuck out your rubbish on the way out and finish on time? Thank you.' Went back to my desk and an hour later I was fired." And the employment services manager said, "Well, who was in the room?" "Oh, that was the CEO and the board." Now, that young man, I'm fairly certain, did not mean to be as rude and disrespectful as I'm sure the manager who fired him thought he was. It was a misunderstanding. That is an unwritten rule about hierarchy that not all people know straight away. So that young man did not realise that you treat the CEO and the board a lot differently to how you treat your colleagues. And that is an unwritten rules thing that people can come unstuck with. It is an extreme example. Another issue is lacking confidence and through that difficulty speaking up, and misunderstandings about interpersonal stuff and having really strong reactions to someone that others don't. So, of course, being me, I don't really raise a problem without suggesting at least a few solutions. So the next couple of slides are looking at some solutions to some of those problems. Sensory difficulties, removing or mitigating cause where that's possible, and often it is. I have a friend who works in the ACT government public service, and she is a lawyer. She's a really great lawyer and she does a wonderful job, but she has really strong sensory sensitivities around smell too, and she was thinking she'd have to leave the job because of the toilet. But they found a spare bathroom that is hers, and she can go to just that one. So that very tiny little tweak has meant that that person can continue her job that she's really good at, and her department can get the benefit. So remove or mitigate cause where possible, and encourage the employee and other employees to raise issues with other sensory difficulties. With the interpersonal stuff, where the autistic person has a relationship with someone that's very different to anything else. So I knew this CEO of a charity through the autism world, and I'd had a really bad response with her, and we fundraised for that charity in my department, and so I was really uncomfortable to talk to her because I'd had a bad experience, and everyone said, "Oh no, she's really nice," but to me she wasn't. So that kind of invalidation, I guess, of someone's experience doesn't really help. So if someone raises an issue like that with their manager, acknowledging it and acting where possible, so restructuring working arrangements if you can, or working with the autistic employee to plan an approach which will address the issue. And often working collegiately is such a good idea. Another one is anxiety, so anxiety impacting on your work performance. Ascertaining the reason and causes where that's possible and addressing it if you can. There's obviously some employers have EAP providers and counselling and HR case managers and all that kind of business. Working together to address issues as they arise. One that really helped for me was the reality check and the reassurance. So for years, like for at least 8 years, if I saw my branch manager and my director in a meeting together with the door closed, I didn't even suspect I might have done something wrong. I knew I'd done something wrong. I must have been completely unaware of it because I didn't remember doing it. And they were having a meeting to decide how to fire me. Of course, it was nonsense. This has never happened. I've never had a performance problem at work. I've never done anything dreadful. But that anxiety and catastrophising is overwhelming. And so I mentioned it to a manager. And he goes, well, just ask me in future. And that solved the problem because I'd asked him about 4 times over a week and I think this is silly. And I stopped, actually resolved it. The other one is reassurance. Some people think no news is good news about work performance. So if your manager doesn't say anything, you just assume that you're doing okay. But a lot of us on the spectrum, particularly if we haven't been in the workforce much, we really struggle with that. We do need a little bit of you're doing a good job. Thank you. Just thank you for the work. That's a really handy thing and it's easy to do. Lack of confidence. Well, I'm sure we'll be talking about interview processes and how not to do that and to actually ascertain someone's skill and aptitude for the job, not through an interview. Job interviews demonstrate how good somebody is at job interviews, a bit like exams or IQ tests. Working with the employee to build their experience, their corporate knowledge and their self-confidence over time. And if people really are very insecure, things like having a mentor or a coach can be a really useful thing. And the last slide of these, challenges around the hidden curriculum, those unwritten rules. Don't assume people know this. And one of the lovely things about employing autistic staff, a lot of neurotypical non-autistic people don't get unwritten rules either. So having a dialogue around workplace behaviours and expectations more widely with the whole staff can be an opportunity that this brings up. And ensuring employers are comfortable to approach their supervisor with questions about this stuff and not be like, oh, you should know that, to actually be more open. And if the staff member is being bullied or micromanaged, is that an autism problem? It's not, is it? That's a bullying problem. You address bullying and micromanagement the way you would with any other staff member. I used to work in HR, so I will always say ensure the employee raising the issue has support and the person who's been accused, because, it's a due process and things. We don't want to demonise people. But bullying and micromanagement are the issue of the person doing it. That's the needs you have to address. It's not the person on the receiving end, apart from supporting them. It's actually nothing to do with autism. It's poor behaviour. And just in summary, I better make sure I click the summary slide there. A job can be life-changing for autistic women or autistic people generally. Some elements of employment really disadvantage autistic people. Some of these you can mitigate and some of these you can't. So interviews, very hard to mitigate. Autistic women have high-level skills in a range of domains a lot of the time. Employing autistic staff makes good business sense, as we sort of talked about. Many employers, I'm sure some employers here, are singing the praises of hiring autistic staff, and this stuff is win-win. And I've just got a couple of resources slides. So this one is for employers. There's jobaccess.gov.au, which is the government's disability employment website. Disability Employment Services, there's a bunch of really good ones. National Disability Recruitment Coordinator, I think they still do bulk rounds for staff with disability, so they're worth having a look. The CRC, who's put this lovely event on today, and DXC Dandelion Program have also, I probably don't need to put their web addresses there. And I love this meme, the choices you make now create your future. Nothing is set in stone, it really is all up to you. And I've just popped in a slide for job seekers and their employees. And yes, that is a mug with the front cover of my wonderful World of Work book on it because I discovered Vistaprint and it was very exciting. So there's a great book called The Hidden Curriculum of Getting and Keeping a Job, which is Malcolm Mayfield, Brenda Miles and Judy Endale, 3 autistic authors. There's my wonderful World of Work, which is aimed at young people on the spectrum, but it's been used by employment service providers and teachers and all sorts of people. Asperger's on the Job by Rudy Simone. And then there's jkp.com, which is my main publisher, and they have lots of good books on that topic. And I think it's time to say, oh, I went too far. There's my contact details. I do have business cards, which I know some people have grabbed themselves one. I have my books table at the back, so I'll be hanging around there at lunchtime and afterwards if people want to have a chat and grab a business card and or a book. I have free postcards as well. And then that's me saying thank you. And the image was in the Canberra Times, reproduced in the Canberra Times, and it's me, of course, and I'm reflected in my office building at work. So I thought that'd be a really nice way to finish. And thank you all very much for being a lovely audience.